I am Casey Coggins, joined by Alvin Hebert.
We still here.
And Andrew Lara.
Fuck this shit.
So, at some point, I'm not sure where I'm going to throw it into this podcast. You're going to hear us rant a little bit about the NBA player empowerment movement. And then for some reason, we end on talking Carmelo Anthony's legacy. Because that's what we do.
That's for the juggalos and the juggalettes.
That is for the juggalos and the juggalettes. Because they're about the only people who appreciate Carmelo Anthony enough.
I was either between that or fucking basketball revolving around too much player empowerment. The
whole demanding trade stuff.
Yeah, like no, not even so much demanding trades. It's fucking the Paul George Kawhi.
Oh yeah, whole tampering stuff. Like
it's not even really tampering.
I kind of I like the Bill Simmons take on it, where he's like, I think Paul George wouldn't have stayed in Oklahoma City if, like, he's like, I think the league told Paul George that he couldn't go to the Lakers, like, even if he wanted to, because of how bad the Lakers tampered with him that previous year. He's like, I think the tampering was so bad and so blatant that the Lakers got fined $250,000 for it, and the league was like, no, Paul George cannot sign with you. Like, that just cannot happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he signed with OKC to re-sign, and now he's in LA. But yeah, it's all.
And even the Kawhi deal.
It's legal tampering. It's legal tampering
because it's amongst players.
Because it's amongst players, and Kawhi has told them his demands. He said, "Hey, look, I'll sign with you, but you need to go get Paul George." And on the side, he's going to Paul George and saying, "Hey, demand a trade so we can go to the Clippers together."
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I mean, it.
I don't know. I feel like if you sign a contract,
this particular situation, I'm like, whatever. We should probably record this.
It's recording.
Where we are recording. It's gonna be a cold intro,
right?
Yeah, I'll go in and we'll do the intro, and then I'll do the intro, and
or we just leave it like this and just be like, welcome to Juggalos and Juggalettes.
Don't try this.
No, I can do we can do the intro really quick, and then I'll do a whole. This was recording before we started the official podcast, and then throw that in.
But yeah, I don't like it. I mean, this situation, it doesn't really affect me whatsoever. It's just the fact that this was a signing demand. Like you wanted this in order to sign. That doesn't seem right.
I don't know. I feel like if you sign like a 4-year max deal, like you should at least live up to like half of that contract.
If this
play 1 year,
that could be.
So let's think of this as a real world situation. If you went to your boss tomorrow and said, "Hey, I'm not going to take this job unless you get my friend in here working at the same at a much higher rate than you're paying any other employee," they're not going to fucking do it. And it's sort of like extortion in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it is. Like Kawhi is holding a franchise hostage, telling them, like, well, one, he's not the first person to do this, so we can't we can talk about Kawhi, because he's the latest example of this. But Anthony Davis just did it. LeBron's done it. Kyrie did it. Like, it's just happened so many years.
I don't think Kyrie.
But this isn't so much. This is involving other players though. Like, there should be something like what I think what Alvin said was a good idea, where it's just like, at least fulfill half of your fucking contract.
Not just 1 year and dip out, bro.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
You have a player option, but before the whole contract's a player option now.
I think
really though.
So
sign
how
a max deal and it's not going to live up to
you
it.
sign a max deal. You have to fulfill 75% of it. if you don't fulfill 75% of it and you demand a trade, you can't sign a deal greater than veterans minimum.
Holy shit!
But like
maybe a mid-level.
But yeah, like I just threw that out there.
Like, holy shit!
It was the first like contract rule that I could think of.
You go from like 30 mil a year to $1.5 million.
But instead of being a 4-year $170 million or whatever it is, 150,
you're only eligible.
You can only sign a 2-year $40 million deal.
Because to me that don't make sense. They went from, all right, we can't just throw out a 7-year like $180 like $1 million contracts anymore, and they changed that up, and then now like players could just be like,
Supermaxes don't even do anything now.
So here's the problem. They added the stipulations before you could get the Supermax too now.
Yeah,
the owners are not. They don't understand
governors,
the players. Fuck that shit.
Governor.
But. So the owners don't understand their players because, the players are, our age and younger for the most part.
Black.
And
Michael Jordan doesn't understand his players.
That has a lot less to do with it than the fact that they're young. Because there are people that probably manage all three of us that are older, that are, 45 and above, that have no idea half of the shit that interests us. And these guys, I just said 45 and above. These owners are, much older than this in most cases. They have no idea what to do when it comes to the players. But there's the power struggle between the owners and the Players Association, saying how much money goes where and what we can do. And then the parity that they wanted to create with the Supermax. They wanted Oklahoma City and Charlotte and San Antonio and Milwaukee to be able to keep the Kawhis and the Giannis's and the Kemba Walkers and the Kevin Durant's and Russell Westbrook and Paul George and James Harden. God damn, Oklahoma City has a fucked up.
Yeah, man, they.
But they created that Supermax thinking money cures everything. No, you're a fucking owner. Money might cure everything for you. These players have a lot more to live for because.
But they're getting money from everywhere else. That's
playing,
the thing.
But They get more
money every year.
So they get to play this game for, let's say, 15 years. I mean, superstars typically have a career of about 15 to 20 years. You make your money then, you retire by 40. You have from 40 to 90 years old to figure out what to do the rest of your life. Like, that's where I think a lot of the players now, where you see the shoe deals turn into something, more endorsements. You see the big stars trying to branch out into clothing lines and production companies, and they're looking at what Magic did back in the 80s, early 90s. They're looking at what Shaq was doing in the mid to late 90s, and since he's retired, like his DJing and all of the other things that they've done. And these players are so smart about knowing that they are their own brand. There's so much reach that they have that they can make, like y'all were saying, like they can make up their money on the side. They don't need that extra $50 million to play for the same team when they can go to a different team, get a better chance at winning a championship, make a little less money salary cap wise, but make it up because they won a title and became a main player on a title winning team.
Yeah.
Like Klay Thompson has like his own set of toasters because of a press conference he did when he autographed a toaster, and then they went on a 19-game winning streak.
Yep.
So like when Klay Thompson, who I wouldn't put in the top 15 players in the league, he's up there. He's in the 15 to 20 range, I think. That's a rough list.
Careful.
I'll have to make out that list.
Careful. I see Alvin's eyes like
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if I actually had him lower than 20. But I feel 15 to 20 is a good rough estimate for a player like Klay Thompson when he's getting so much publicity and so many endorsements, and he's kind of a weird person.
He has
so
that
he has
chocolate milk commercial.
Which Kobe Bryant does, I think.
Yeah, and Kevin Love did it at one point, and
So-
Al Horford does it now.
Right, and I mean they're not big names, but they're getting tons of endorsement money,
Yeah,
and that kind of all leads into this player empowerment, where that's why I think it should be, the contract needs to get cut significantly for them to really like stop the tampering. It's kind of what my stance on with when we talked about the Zeke Elliott sexual harassment suit when he got suspended. I know it was 2 seasons ago now. But when we were talking about that, I'm like, you have to set a standard. You have to set precedent. You can't just let, time after time after time, people keep getting away with things and giving them a slap on the wrist. Like, what is a $50,000 fine going to give a player who makes $40 million in a year?
Yep.
Like, that doesn't do anything. You can suspend them for a few games. They're going to just come back later that year or the next year. Like, you have to cut it off at some point. Somebody has to be
Made an example of.
Yeah, like somebody has to be the scapegoat kind of thing. Somebody has to be the one that they just say, look, you're the final straw. Like, we know that we let all of this stuff happen in years previous, but you are the straw that broke the camel's back.
I think that's Kawhi.
And I think it should be Kawhi, because how dangerous and how slippery the slope is going to get after this.
Mm-hmm.
Because at any point, if somebody is coming up on Kawhi's slightly different. Paul George is the trouble. Like, that's where the trouble is created, because as you mentioned, 1 year after he signed this 5-year deal to stay in Oklahoma City, he demands a trade because Kawhi told him to come to the Clippers with him and demand a trade. So Kawhi was a free agent. Like, he can go and recruit players. But I think it's Paul George more that needs to be made the example of. Like, Anthony Davis needed to be made the example of. Like, you still have Kawhi when he was with the Spurs needed to be made an example of. That would have been a little rougher because there's a whole injury thing, and you don't want to like step over the injury boundaries. But the way he handled it was a little interesting. But those guys who have remaining years on their deal, let's say more than 1 year. So let's say, the start of this season, the player has this full year and all of next year before they can even opt out of their deal. If they demand a trade before that opt out, that's when
I think there should be like a kicker in the contract.
You have to
like the team gets a certain percentage back or whatever, like something like that.
Yeah, see the
that gets slippery.
The issue with that is
he's not living up to full of the contract. I feel they should get some of that money back.
That it needs to be a bylaw in the collective bargaining agreement, not a contract obligation between player and team, because it should be any player on any team should have to fulfill some portion of their deal before they cause a rampage.
Yeah, because I mean, like the sixth man on the team, he can't go out there and like demand a trade. Like,
he can demand a trade,
unless you're like talking about like Lou Williams,
but he doesn't have the same power to do it.
He don't got that same pool. They're gonna tell him like, nah, boy.
Anybody could go in there and demand a trade.
Yeah, you're gonna have to put out that contract.
Well, also, it's gonna be a whole lot easier to trade that person because you're more likely to get dollar for dollar trade value with your six man than you are trying to trade your superstar. What we saw the Thunder get and what we saw the Pelicans get for Paul George and Anthony Davis, we had never seen before. Nobody gets that sort of haul for a superstar because, one, teams don't want to pay that, and two, they just believe they're going to get the person anyway. In the Clippers case, that one's a little trickier because, as I said earlier, they were kind of being extorted by Kawhi. Kawhi pretty much gutted the Clippers' future
for 2 years.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
Possibly 3, maybe more. We'll see how it plays out. But
because with the swap picks.
Yeah, who knows what he's gonna want later on.
Yeah, and he also signed a 3-year deal. He didn't sign a full 4-year.
2+1, yeah.
That's what LeBron was doing with
the new contract
Cleveland
with
and
Miami.
No, Miami. He signed a 4-year
Did he?
off the bat. Yeah, he did the 3-year. Then he opted in for the 4th.
But yeah, I think all the contracts that were signed this offseason, it's not all of them, but the big ones were all 2+1s. Free agency 2021 is going to be just as crazy as 2019.
I mean, all power to the players. Like they understand that they can get theirs from owners, and they don't have to feel stuck, because I'm sure what they see a lot of times is, and across all sports, think of all-time great players who never won a championship, and think of how they're revered. Think of how we would think of like Kobe Bryant if he never won one.
So you're saying this is all like
you have to
ego thing?
It's a little bit Kevin Garnett, towards the end of his Timberwolves tenure, he knew that he needed to go and get a ring, and he was lucky enough to have something happen to allow him to be traded to Boston. And at the same time that Ray Allen was signing there as a free agent, and they were able to team up those two with Paul Pierce and get a title.
But these guys they're not at the end of their careers, but they're reaching towards the end of their primes.
Yeah.
These guys are barely hitting their primes, if not just
in it
there.
already.
Kawhi's fully in his prime right now.
I think Paul George is too.
And these guys are how old is Kawhi, like 25?
No, he's our age.
28.
29.
He's 29?
Uh-huh.
And Paul George is 30.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis is younger by like 2 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
And then
man.
right on top of that, you got Karl Anthony Towns, 24.
It's like guys like George Gervin and Karl Malone and Charles Barkley, and like in football, Dan Marino's the name that gets brought up the most with as far as talented player who never got a ring. It's like a lot of those guys, you put like, had they won 2 rings, you probably put them in the top 20 of all time. Some people might put Charles Barkley and Karl Malone in the top 20 of all time just because they were so good for so long.
Well, they are in the top 50 of all time.
Well, that was in 1990 or 98, whatever it was. That was a long time ago. That I think quite a few people have jumped them since. Like LeBron hadn't happened yet. Tim Duncan hadn't happened yet.
Do they still do that?
No.
They don't do that top 50
They
no
might
more,
do it at the 100 year, like, and do a top 100 for the 100 years, but that's what it was. It was top 50 for the first 50 years of the NBA.
Oh.
But I think players understand, like, KD wanted to play, he wanted a challenge as far as playing a different style of basketball, but he also knew that he needed to get a ring. He knew, like, if he wanted to have a legacy that compared in any way to his contemporaries of this generation, and his contemporaries are, well, right now, Kawhi and LeBron. Like, those are his contemporaries. You possibly could have put Carmelo Anthony there as a contemporary 4 years ago. Now Carmelo Anthony has, like...
Poor Carmelo.
Like, he's going to be the forgotten great player of this generation.
Be the most underrated fucking player. Underappreciated.
All said and done.
You think underappreciated?
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
How underappreciated?
Because people...
He doesn't have a job.
Well, so 10 years from now, when people think about this generation, they're going to think of LeBron's all-around greatness, Kevin Durant's scoring ability, Kawhi's defensive ability and like
Melo being selfish.
They're going.
That's what they're
going.
I'm just like, where are you going to put him at?
Carmelo's
one of the greatest scorers to play.
He won 5 straight scoring titles.
Yeah.
He won 7 out of 8, I believe, for like the prime of his career.
Until Kevin, where he's underappreciated. Is it because you're saying right now that
appreciated? Do people really appreciate him? Do people love him? Do the people love him?
I think the people don't love him because of his attitude and what he did in like Denver and New York. But
what he did in Denver and New York, man, he balled out of control.
I mean, well,
he led Denver to a Western Conference Finals.
Led the Knicks to a second round.
What's Chauncey Billups?
Oh, wash.
Get Chauncey the Billups. Fuck out of here. Chauncey Billups.
Where's Chauncey Billups? After that, did he go that far?
That's like throwing in AI. Hey, I was on that team.
He was.
Washed. you didn't finish your sentence, so I finished it for you.
But Melo's washed right now.
He is. I'm not disagreeing with you. Like
that's nobody.
We're not.
But we're saying he's not appreciated. People.
His great.
That's what I'm finding. That's
what he contributed to the game. Nobody gives him credit for.
Because like people don't like him. That's why you feel like he's not appreciated.
I think it's just that people don't really appreciate how great he actually was during this era. Like they just don't. They think of him as an isolation. They think of him as better offensive Joe Johnson. Like Joe Johnson's better defense. Joe Johnson is the better defensive Carmelo Anthony, and Carmelo Anthony is the better offensive Joe Johnson.
Yeah, because I thought after Carmelo played defense.
As a Spurs fan, after the whole Morris situation just fell apart, I thought Melo should have been the first one we called.
So I really want to pull this up. Well, I did pull this up. This is the Denver Nuggets Western Conference Finals in 2009. So Carmelo Anthony was 24 years old.
Okay, young spry.
Chauncey Billups was 32. Kenyon Martin was 31. Nene
so
was
they're in their primes. Or
primes. Get the fuck out of here.
They're young 30s. What are you talking
about? Chauncey aged like sour milk.
All right, if you want to say like they aged different, but
you want to
like,
talk about prime 30s. Chauncey? That's fucking
05.
With the Pistons.
Yes.
This is 2 years after LeBron took the soul of the Detroit Pistons players. Like every single Detroit Piston player in 07, LeBron just Shang Tsung. Like he just took their soul.
Fucking Tayshaun Prince was still trapped till like 3 years ago.
We haven't heard from Rip Hamilton since.
Dog, for real. He took off that mask and he disappeared.
So Chauncey Billups was right outside of his prime. He was still he averaged the second most points for them at 18.
He could contribute, but he wasn't Chauncey.
Yeah, he wasn't the same Chauncey. J.R. Smith
18
was
points
on
is not the same time.
J.R. Smith.
No.
This was
young J.R. Yeah,
23 years old, still had no idea what to do on the basketball court other than pick
anything
the ball
is
up and
possible.
shoot. But yeah, so Kmart was 31, right outside of his prime. He still was a productive player. Nene was 26. Linus Kleza, Dante Jones, Birdman, Anthony Carter, Johan Petro, Ronaldo Balkman, and Jason Hart were the last 6 guys on that team. So you had Carmelo, Chauncey, JR, Kmart, Nene, and then their 6th man was Linus Kleza.
So what
trash ass team.
You say that's a trash team that went to the
Western Conference Finals because of how great Carmelo in that series against end of prime Kobe, possibly still a couple years away from the end of his prime Kobe, averaged 27 on all defensive first team Kobe Bryant 10 years, however long he was. And they took him to 6 games.
All right.
This is Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, young Trevor Ariza, Lamar Odom, good Lamar Odom, not
good one.
Yeah,
not crackhead.
Good. Andrew,
this is in between crack.
Oh,
good Andrew Bynum, and then they had the Derek Fisher, Shannon Brown, Sasha Vujacic, Jordan Farmer. I have to say it.
these two teams right here wouldn't make the playoffs in the Western Conference this year.
Well, not today's game though.
Like this
in the East, they could have.
The East, yeah, they would be like top 5.
Oh yeah, the East easy.
That Nuggets team would have made the finals.
100%.
But that's to finish this Carmelo discussion and kind of wrap up the player empowerment thing, so I can do the full intro. The Carmelo Anthony is going to be, and I have this fear as, you know, a guy who has his jersey on my wall, is going to be the, like, Tim Duncan. I think after, you know, 20 years, they're going to look back at Tim Duncan's career and be like, he only averaged 18 a game. Like, yeah, but he played for 19 years. They just reduced his minutes every year. They reduced his usage every year after his prime. And he was a productive player for this long.
The best power forward in the game.
Yeah, and people, and that's going to get tricky in 20 years when power forwards are looking like LeBron James more and more. Like, LeBron James is closer to a power forward now than a point guard. But that's just how time works. Is the guys who were great in the moment that we got to watch with our own eyes during their primes, and we can remember Tim Duncan almost getting a quadruple double against the Nets in 2003 Game 6. We can remember the Paul Pierce wheelchair shit himself game. Like, we can remember Kyrie Irving's shot in Game 7 of the NBA Finals against Golden State, and we can remember how great all these guys were during that time. In 20 years from now, we're going to be the old people telling these young kids to get off our porch with this. What is Zaire Wade is the greatest two guard of all time?
The fuck out of here!
Like that. That's. I'm sure at some point that's never going to be said.
Never.
But
He's
I mean,
just a kid, man.
I just threw like a name of somebody who we know is going to be in the NBA at some point. Like 20 years from now, some 15-year-old is going to be saying that player X was greater than Larry Bird. And it's just not going to be true.
Just be like, what did you say?
Yeah, dog. Like, yo, Melo played and started 78 games just 2 years ago
for that trash ass Knicks team.
No, that was OKC.
Oh, that was OKC. That's
78 out of 82 games.
That was
what did he
his
do?
First year.
He averaged 16 points.
What shooting?
40%.
40% is trash.
What?
For him?
Okay, for him, yes, because he averaged 44.9 career.
Yeah. 45% is a lot better than 40%.
Okay.
Shooting.
I mean, anybody who's shooting mostly jump shots, if they shoot over 40%, no matter how many they're taking, you live with that every day of your life. Like, he was never... He's not Russell Westbrook bad, but he's not Steph Curry good.
That's why I said as soon as the Morris situation fell apart, I wanted that first call to be Melo. That would have been he would have fit great.
Yeah, he would have. I really think so. Because his ego is gone.
100%.
If he still has an ego, he needs to go on with something. Like, lay off the drugs.
Need to stay in that hoodie, bro.
100%.
Still with Lala, right?
Huh?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, he's with Lala.
They're still together.
Yeah, they're
right?
still together. Yeah.
I thought they split.
No, they were separated, but they got back together.
Oh shit. He's the pop culture enthusiast.
Yeah, dog. But no, that's why. Melo would have been my first call if I was RC Buford. Be like, hey, Marcus Morris thing fell apart. What you got going on?
Yeah. So
I would have given Melo that. Was it 2 year, 20 mil?
Yeah.
I would have given him that. If we had the space for it,
better than fucking Trey Lyles.
100%.
I actually really
100%.
like Trey Lyles, and I kind of like the signing. I don't like the signing as much as Marcus Morris, but Trey Lyles is also like 6 years younger.
It's
than
a good
Marcus
plan B,
Morris, and like
but-
he's 6'11" and can defend and like shoot the ball well.
Yeah, he sounds like a Spurs guy.
He's not. He's not Bertans, and there's probably no way that he's going to see the court as much as Marcus Morris would have. But he's definitely he is a nice option to have. So
He's not just some scrub.
I think that should wrap up this section. Thank y'all for listening. Now on to the regularly scheduled podcast. So this episode, other than our nice little tangent that we got on, is about the Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, what the fuck trade. And we're going to discuss what is the one rule change we want to see in any sport, because it's mid-July and
Baseball hasn't started yet.
why the fuck not? Like I watched the MLB All-Star game. That shit was boring. It was not. They need to figure out a way to make the All-Star game a little more exciting, I think.
That shit was boo boo. I don't know how you're gonna make it more exciting, bro.
It's difficult.
It's baseball. Like
Yeah.
that those games is going to happen.
I think we can think of reasons or ways that they can fix it, but that's a different topic for a different July day. So this Russell Westbrook trade is where we're going to start. As I always do, initial reaction, because when I got the notification as I was about to get into the elevator to leave work, I was just blown away. I couldn't believe that it actually happened. So that was kind of my initial thought.
You're surprised?
I'm surprised that it actually happened.
I'm surprised it was with Houston.
I'm not surprised.
I wasn't surprised by either of those.
So I'm not surprised that they traded that was the trade. Like on paper, it made perfect sense. But I'm surprised that these two teams actually pulled the trigger on doing it. That's what I was surprised by.
The only thing that really surprised me is what they got for him. It was a lot.
They probably were like, there's no way in hell we're taking Chris Paul's contract without getting something else. Like, we can trade Russell Westbrook to other teams. Like, we have other suitors.
But they got Miami sitting on the back.
They got another king's ransom.
Yeah. They got 2 ransoms.
Rockets ransom.
God damn it.
I was telling people
they got the
that.
whole fucking NASA budget for that.
Dead.
Yeah.
There you go. Houston, we got a problem.
God damn it.
Y'all the one that started it.
Houston, we got a problem.
So, I know, Andrew, when the news broke, you texted us, RIP Houston chances.
Yeah.
Really?
This is only one ball.
You got the text too?
Houston, what?
I haven't seen such a thing.
The audacity.
You back on a flip phone or what?
So
Blackberry.
you obviously didn't like the trade for Houston.
I didn't. I mean, I feel like Houston's in a weird spot. I don't think they could win with CB3. I don't think they can win with Russ. I don't see there's something else there. There's something else that they're missing.
Like a bench.
Yeah, like a Kevin Durant, and just run it back with the Oklahoma City Thunder from 2012.
Maybe if KD fucking
Trey Capella for
But-
demanded that.
So it's what
He didn't get that
you're
memo.
kind of alluding to, Andrew, is the same issue that Portland has had for the last 4 years. Is you have this great backcourt. Now, you can argue that the combination of Dame and CJ is either better or not better than Westbrook and Harden, just depending on how you feel about each of those players. The way that CJ and Dame match, I think, is a better fit than
Yes.
Westbrook and Harden. But I think top level talent, you can argue that Harden and Westbrook is now the best backcourt in the league.
I would take Portland over Houston.
Which I kind of thought that you might, just based off of, you know, your reaction to the trade and things like that. Again, I would probably still take Portland's over Houston's, just because I know, like, we grew up and watching the Spurs and how they operate, and, you know, team chemistry kind of matters, and working
100%.
together and being able to play off of each other matters.
I think this Portland team made it as far as they did this postseason because of chemistry.
But what I'm saying with
I'll go for
this Houston team being in the same situation that the Portland team is, you'll know how my stance that you can't win a title without an elite wing player. They don't have an elite wing player. Russell Westbrook and James Harden are great in their own, like, by their own standards, and, you know, we hadn't seen an offensive season like James Harden just did in a long time. And we haven't seen guys go for triple doubles the same way that Russell Westbrook has.
This just looks like D'Antoni.
That's beside the
D'Antoni
point.
just like fucking
They don't.
looking at it and just
who
like,
the fuck
oh.
on this team are they going to try to, like, stop LeBron with? Are they going to throw PJ Tucker on LeBron? Like,
Isn't that what
Daniel
they have been doing?
House?
Who are they gonna stop the Clippers with?
Isn't
Yeah,
that what they have been doing?
Who are they? Who? They haven't had to face these guys yet. Like, Houston has only gone up against Golden State, and guess what? Golden State beat them with KD and without KD.
And it's just, I don't like chemistry and whatnot between Russ and Harden. That was years ago. They're not the same players. They've grown more. I want to say independent. They've grown more.
They had their own systems where they were the catalysts for so many
Yes.
years, but
Individually.
they both are really good friends. They both know that they have to work together in some way to.
That's what we said about
make it work.
CP3.
But CP3 was not in the same physical, like, readiness that Westbrook is. Westbrook has, even when he's gotten hurt, he plays. He's there, and he gives you 80% of what Chris Paul gives you. When he's hurt, Chris Paul ends up missing games and misses. You know, I think he missed 20 games this season or something like that.
Probably.
And he missed those two vital games last year in the playoffs. And when he was with the Clippers, he got hurt. When he was with the Hornets, when they were the New Orleans Hornets, he got hurt. Like, he's always missed games
He's always
vital
been
games
hurt.
because he's been banged up, and he's a little guy. He's going to have more severe injuries. So you at least know that Westbrook will be there when when crunch time hits, when playoffs hit. He will be there giving you that 2,000% effort that he always gives. Alvin, what was your initial reaction to it? We didn't get there.
I thought it was a good move.
That's it.
That's all you got?
That's all you got. No,
I mean,
no
I don't-
reason, no explanation.
They got
One,
better.
I think Westbrook in that system fits him better because he likes to run. They run. They don't give a fuck if you miss a
Dog is
shot.
basketball. Everybody runs.
They don't
It's like
care.
saying that shit in soccer. He could be good at soccer because he likes to run. I mean, the
Even-
ball's on the floor and
Even
everybody
Gumbo
runs.
started giving you those eyes. Like, what?
Okay.
Motherfucker.
The system is a run and gun
No,
system.
I know what you mean. No, it's perfect. I honestly thought when as I said, Andrew texted us R.I.P.
D'Antoni
Houston
gasm.
Kansas. I love the move that they made. The giving up the picks kind of sucks because, you know, when you're paying guys so much money, you need those picks to be able to fill out your roster and, like, keep the talent level where it needs to be. But as a whole, you got somebody who he doesn't shoot threes the same way that Chris Paul does. Chris Paul is a better 3-point shooter than, arguably the worst 3-point shooter in NBA history at volume. But you have this interesting slash and kick, pick and roll dynamic that D'Antoni is going to be able to use with Westbrook and Harden, because Harden is a great playmaker. Westbrook's a great playmaker. The only thing offensively that Harden does better than Westbrook is shoot threes. Well, and draw fouls, but I think they're refereed differently, because I'm a believer that some players get calls based on their...
It's the Shaq Diesel effect.
Somewhat, yeah. And James Harden is going in there to flop and draw a foul, when Westbrook's going in there to just shoulder you, create room, get a shot off. Like, he doesn't care if he's fouled or not. He's going to try to get the best out of the situation. The only skepticism I have about this Rockets team is the way the roster is filled out, because it took an all-time great season from Harden to get them where they were last year. And, they made the second round. They ended up being the number 4 seed, which at the beginning of the season, they were like, are they going to make the playoffs? Had they not lost this ridiculous game against OKC, they would have ended up the 2 seed. But before this trade, I thought they didn't get better. They got a year older. You're not going to get the same Harden season. They're not going to make the playoffs. Now, I feel they are going to make the playoffs, because Westbrook's going to be there all year. Like, if Westbrook gets hurt, that's going to be an oddity that you can't predict. You could have predicted Chris Paul getting hurt. And so they're not going to have to rely on James Harden so much that they did last year, and they'll be able to work out the kinks early in the season. If they're 5-5 after 10 games, not going to be surprising. If they're 2-8 after 10 games, not going to be surprising. What will be surprising, though, is them missing the playoffs with these two guys heading this offensive system in this day and age, when you can line those two guys up against any team, and only a handful of teams might have a better twosome. I thought it was a move that Houston needed to do. They needed to pull the trigger on upgrading from Chris Paul. Also, because Chris Paul was about to get $38 million at 33 years old. And now you're paying somebody like $34 million, something like that, who's 30 years old. Let's see. 29 years old. I think Westbrook's 29.
And getting better production out of him.
Right. And as I said, you don't necessarily need to worry about Westbrook shooting threes. It kind of goes to how is he going to handle, like, how are they going to work it out? Because if D'Antoni's and the Rockets are telling Russell Westbrook to jack up a 3 whenever he gets a chance, it's not going to work. That is not going to be the best way to make somebody the most effective version of themselves. But D'Antoni has always shown to get the best offensive version of a player. Like, no matter who it is, he's been able to get the best offensive production out of them. And they have 2 great players now to build behind.
They're just going to be very explosive, I see.
So
they're going to be able to score with a lot of people.
I have Houston still making the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
You still have them making the playoffs?
Yeah,
you still
100%.
see them as a championship contender?
Right.
Alvin, a championship contender at all?
No, because they lack on defense so very hard.
And I don't see them there as well, but they're going to be the typical D'Antoni teams. They're going to win 55 games, make it into the playoffs. The game's going to slow down, and they're going to miss 35 straight threes. So, so I want to run down this list really quick. Sorry, I got distracted. I need to give my mother my password for Adobe.
Password is password.
Password. 1, 2, 3.
So I'm gonna run down the teams in the NBA or the Western Conference, and we'll say yes or no to them making the playoffs, because we're going to have to get 8 teams out of this Western Conference. So I'll start from the bottom and go up to the 1 seed from last year. So Phoenix,
No.
Dallas,
No.
New Orleans.
Yes.
No. Oh, I wanted to say yes, though, but no.
I don't think they're there this year, especially with Zion being overweight and out of shape. Memphis, no. Right?
Nope.
No.
No.
Minnesota,
No.
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 The Lakers,
Yes.
Yes.
the Kings,
No.
Yes. Casey's pause.
I'm gonna say
Don't
yes.
do it, man. We always do it, man.
I'm gonna say yes.
I said yes last year, and they
I
fucked
know.
me
I
over.
had them at my surprise 8 seed 2 years ago, and they fucked me. But I think looking at the rest of the landscape, I kind of see them getting in. So I have the Lakers and the Kings in. Andrew has the Lakers, the Kings, and the Pelicans in.
Yes.
And Andrew just has Alvin just has the Lakers in.
Yeah.
Clippers.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm running out of hands. You need to keep 2 fingers on your hand. Okay. Keep track of where
I got
you're
my
at.
4.
Yeah,
I
keep
got
track of where you're
I
at.
got my 2.
San Antonio.
Yes.
We're all yes there. The Thunder.
No.
No.
No. Utah.
Yes.
Yes. Houston.
Yes.
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 Portland.
Yes.
Shit, yeah.
Denver.
Yes.
I'm at 8 already. I'm maxed.
And then Golden State is the last team.
Golden State's a no.
So
Golden State is mine.
So I have 9.
but I mean, you can make arguments that Golden State could make it. Honestly, with the way that the Thunder have built their roster, with some of the veterans they have and the pieces that they have to move, like if they made a couple changes here and there, it would not surprise me to see them in the 8 seed. Nothing better than that. The Kings I had in, you never know with teams like the Wolves, who are getting their best player just even better. And they've made some interesting moves. The Pelicans with their young talent, even Dallas with their young talent, with Porzingis coming back if he can stay healthy. So you have quite an interesting Western Conference layout.
Who's in the East?
Nobody.
Like players wise, who's in the East?
Giannis,
Giannis,
KD,
Oladipo,
Embiid.
Kyrie.
Ben Simmons, trash.
Damn.
Al Horford,
Blake Griffin.
Kemba Walker, Jimmy Butler, Trae Young. That's how bad we've gotten.
I was like, now you're stretching.
Now we're talking like Kyle Lowry,
Nikola Vucevic,
Mark Gasol,
Tobias Harris,
Aaron Gordon,
Jason Tatum,
Terry Rozier,
Jaylen Brown,
Y'all are stretching,
Marcus
man.
Smart,
Kevin Love.
DeAndre Jordan.
You got a bunch of 6 men.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's
The talent just dropped tremendously.
Y'all got a bunch of 6 men.
We're about
You got a starting 5 and the rest are 6.
So here's the transition, because the rule change that is going to come into effect this year, where it's just going to be all the top vote getters make the All-Star game, because they're going to go Eastern Conference All-Star starters. Al Horford. It's gonna be the Philadelphia 76ers and
bro,
and Kemba Walker,
and then one Giannis.
Yeah, man.
The reserves are.
The reserves are the Orlando Magic's team.
It's ugly. So rule changes. I did want to discuss. I don't know why I thought. Let's talk the one rule change in any sport we want to see.
He gave us like 3 hours notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it would. With things like this, typically your best response you already have thought about previously, where you've been in a conversation with somebody and you're like, what I want to see happen in this sport, this. Like, I don't know how like League of Legends works as far as like what rules they have, but like I wouldn't have been surprised if one of y'all were like, you know what, I want to see this rule change in League of Legends. Like, I want to see this rule change in soccer. I want to see this rule change in tennis. Things like that just, we've thought about in previous times that now we get to just talk on our platform about.
I want to see title fights in boxing go until someone gets knocked out.
If he dies, he dies.
Talk about 18 rounds of fucking...
like 17 rounds like back in the day.
So, I'm going to start with Andrew's rule.
My rule, I don't know if it's a rule. My rule is not so much play, but the pay. I like what Alvin thought of earlier, or what Alvin said earlier about, or what y'all both came up with. It really is just a joint effort about when a player signs in the NBA to a contract, they have to fulfill at least 75% of it before like any kind of
not no 1 year. And then
I think it keeps both the player and the franchise in check in a sense.
Yeah,
like y'all are stuck with each other. Y'all signed a 4-year contract. Y'all are stuck for 3 years with each other.
You signed this contract.
Yeah.
We offered it up to you. We want you here. You signed it. You should live up to some certain extent of it, not just 1 year and dip out.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is anywhere, unless there is an actual explicit statement in the contract saying, give us 30 days notice and we can waive this contract, or there can be a buyout, like some sort of agreement as part of the contract.
Like you could throw it in there, like, yeah, you feel that like a 75% rule, but on top of that, afterwards, everyone has a no trade clause.
When you buy a house,
you could somewhat determine who you want to go to.
You can't just go a year later and be like, yeah, I'd like to get traded to this other house.
Mm-hmm.
I want out of my deal that I've already signed on to. I just don't think this house is good enough for me now. So I'm all for that. I think it kind of goes to.
I think we should just set it in motion.
I think it kind of goes to the rule that I'm not going to say tonight, but it has been something that I've discussed as far as rules go, and it goes to the straight out of high school into the NBA thing that's going on, where they wanted to get rid of one and done, and I wanted the NCAA for basketball to go to the Major League Baseball kind of agreement, to where if you sign a letter of commit, like if you commit to a college, you sign your letter of intent, whatever the document it is you sign, you commit to 3 years at that university. You can transfer and all of that stuff still applies, but you have to spend your 3 years in college before you can go to the NBA. One, it keeps the NCAA in their money grabbing fingers to get primetime players who end up developing in college, and you get kind of a better rapport with these players. Like some people forget the Harrison twins at Kentucky. Like they played there a couple years, but they got overshadowed by the Carl Anthony Towns and some of the other guys that were there. Like, you kind of forget, like, people forget Ben Simmons' freshman year at LSU.
Ben Simmons forgot about his freshman year at LSU.
People forget about Michael Beasley at Kansas State.
Yeah,
I'm sure he forgot about that too.
Oh, yeah.
With
So,
the shit he
so
I don't think he
like,
even knew about it.
imagine like Michael Beasley could have gone straight to the NBA out of high school. That's how good of a player he was. But some of these other guys that just aren't ready for the NBA, when they sign to go to Duke, Kentucky, Texas, Arizona, whatever big school that they have, I think you can kind of look at the Michigan State standard of these guys sign with Michigan State. They stay 3 to 4 years. Very seldomly do you see a one and done at Michigan State, and look at the type of talent that they can produce for the NBA. Like from Jason Richardson to Draymond Green.
I mean, but also they're not gunning for these like 5-star recruits. Also, they're like getting like 4-star,
right,
3 stars.
But those
people
are,
that they can mature in.
Those are the guys who have to
have to stay longer. Yeah.
Wouldn't
They can't go straight into the
they
NBA.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
They're not good enough to go straight into the NBA.
Yeah.
Like it wasted a full year of Ben Simmons to go to LSU for the 1 year. It wasted Kyrie Irving's first year because he got hurt at Duke, but you would kind of rather see him get hurt in the NBA because now you just wasted another player's spot on the Duke University basketball team. So that's kind of, it kind of goes hand in hand with this NBA. The players, if they sign something, they need to stay this amount of time before they can move on and start throwing their hissy fits.
Like this would have stopped fucking Paul George.
Like
leaving.
Because he
so-
wouldn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So
It wouldn't have been none of that.
let's think worst case. Like, say this rule happened and it got approved. I think the
Spurs
worst
would have won another championship.
I think the worst case is, you just have a player complaining the entire time. But the Lakers dealt with that for like 19 years in Kobe Bryant.
I mean, like they were complaining about that like a few years ago when they was offering those like supermax deals.
You get it every year with John Wall and Bradley Beal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
A bunch of history
and like
there.
they'll like lock down a player for like 7 years. You know what I'm saying? Like
But
he couldn't get out of that contract until it was like 4 or 5 years deep in that contract.
so I'm all for it. I don't have a gavel because I think we're all for it.
There you go.
Alvin, what is your rule change that you propose?
I wish I had came up that rule change when we was talking with Andrew, but I just feel the VAR in soccer should just be throughout every division,
It should be
league.
adopted by everybody across world soccer.
Yeah, all across world soccer instead of just keeping it. I think they just have it for the World Cup right now or something like that.
Now to go on a different level, because that's what we do here. Would you propose the same thing for baseball, seeing as how the Atlantic League has started using robotic umpires to where you can steal first base?
What?
I didn't.
I just wanted to drop that note in there. But
Yeah, I was like, that's just.
That's it. I don't know. That sounds a bit too much for baseball.
But yeah, I think that should absolutely.
What's baseball without
happen.
a little human error?
Right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you what it is. The whole thing is filled with errors. But
damn That's part of the game. The human error is part of baseball.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just makes sense to have VAR. It does. They're so good at it. It doesn't interrupt the game too much, and they just tack on the time at the end.
Exactly. When they go, and it's just like it's like a minute or so, they got it. And then like how you said, they're just gonna add that minute at the end of the time period anyways. So it doesn't really hurt soccer at all to have it.
Yeah, and you get the call right. Like you would rather get the call right and disallow or allow a goal or a penalty kick. and not, at the end of the game, the other team wins, or there's a draw, an important draw, in a group stage match of the World Cup. And I know the World Cup has adopted it, but
because I think they could go back and replay flops, right? Or
yeah,
they'll mistaken on that.
So when it comes to a penalty,
if it's a penalty,
if
they can review it,
and they call a penalty, they can go and review it to see if it was a flop, or if the person called it a flop, they can go and review it and see if there was actual contact. And that's how England got their one goal against the United States in the semifinals, is because they went to VAR and they saw that there was a little clip of the shooting foot of the English player. So again, are we all for VAR worldwide in every soccer league for men and women?
Drop that gavel.
Just because I don't know how to argue it, I'm going to say yes.
Drop that gavel, son.
Yeah. So my rule change is NBA as well. I'd bring back the hand check.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That is
you got Alvin hella hyper right now. Like, what?
I
don't even know why they got rid of it.
With how the freedom of movement thing that they wanted to allow. But with the way that the NBA is going now, how much more competitive do you think it could be to watch like Russell Westbrook guarding Steph Curry and allowing him to hand check? Imagine
you're going to really see who's really good on offense.
You're going to see who can play a whole season.
Yeah.
And
nobody.
Not necessarily that. I mean,
Melo would. Can't hand check Melo.
He just take you down to the post.
Does he have a post game?
He has an amazing post game.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Underappreciated.
Underappreciated.
You just proved it.
I just see him take jump shots. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. That's underappreciated. It's just simplifying a game.
You don't remember how great he was because he shot a lot of jump shots, but he also had a back to the basket post game where he would, he's a big bodied 6'8" guy.
I know he is.
Anybody smaller than him, he would just go and back him down, go on the block, and they'd post him up because he can shoot this little turnaround, fadeaway Kobe MJ jump shot. But I mean, I understand the NBA wanting the freedom of movement because that increases scoring. But teams are going to be jacking a bunch of threes anyways. You're just going to be having guys run more pick and roll, and you're going to have more ball movement. That's the only thing you're going to affect. You're not going to have as many Steph Curry break down the defender. You're actually going to have to see how good Steph and James Harden and KD and Kyrie and Kemba and all these guys actually are. And I think it would make for an entertaining game, but it would also make for a little more parity. If you had hand checking the last 5 years, I don't know if Golden State makes 5 straight finals. They probably make 2 or 3 at least, especially with KD.
If they got rid of moving screens, then they definitely wouldn't.
Absolutely not. Even though they called a moving screen on Boogie and then the next play down on that Kyle Lowry 3-point shot, Draymond Green was getting just bear hugged by Marcus Gasol, and he still blocked their shot.
But they didn't call none of that.
Nope, not one bit. So that is the end of the rule change discussion. One, I do want to finish on this last rule change that we actually saw take place yesterday in the Wimbledon final. If y'all know about the longest tennis match in history, it lasted 11 hours and 43 minutes.
I thought it was 7 days.
It no, not the Andy Samberg. But that was based off of what happened. No, that was based off of what this was.
They died at the end.
So they
I think so.
eventually, pretty much that's what happened. So Wimbledon, in the fifth set, you had to win by 2 games. So you couldn't win 7-6. You had to win 8-6.
It's like pickup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a few matches there have been go over 24-22s, like just ridiculous lengthy matches, and the statistics show that when players win a match like that, they lose 85% of the time in the next round. So they wanted to they finally adjusted to the rule to where you would play a tiebreaker in the fifth set. They were the last major to do so. So yesterday you have 2 of the all-time greats, Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer, play a 5-set match that ends up being tied 12-12 in the fifth set. And the rule change there was in the finals, you would make it to 12-all, and then you would play a tie break to decide the match. So you don't have this long dragged on final. You can get
trying to get to.
They don't have to try to close the roof and turn the lights on because that interrupts play and all this stuff. So the rule change that took place this year, first year ever, got a final that hit the rule change, where the rule change actually had to come into play. And I kind of thought it was a little coincidence that the first year that the rules had changed for Wimbledon, you actually saw it in action. So that I believe wraps it up for this week's episode. Again, there's another part of this episode that is going to be, I don't know if I put it before this or after this. So I hope you enjoyed that part. This has been another episode of the Benchwarmers podcast. I am Casey Coggins. As always, I'm joined by Alvin Hebert.
Deuces.
And Andrew Lira.
Guys, wait. If you like what you're listening to, hit that subscribe button. Review, rate, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. Tell the fucking nosy neighbor that lives next door to you, listen to this shit. You tell them to listen, subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you.
Hit that notification button.
We are fans.